With Georgia's second scrimmage of the fall taking place inside Sanford Stadium over the weekend here in the Classic City, the Bulldogs' 2024 fall camp is officially in the rearview. So it's time to take stock of everything we learned about this Georgia team during fall camp with one final depth chart projection entering the highly anticipated Week 1 matchup against Clemson.
We just stepped on their face with a hobnail boot and broke their nose. We just crushed their face.
What's up, guys? I'm Tyler, and this is Glory UGA, brought to you by our great friends at MyBookie and Alumni Hall. And if you are new to this channel, if you are just finding us for the first time, you're going to find out real quick that what we do here on this channel is talk ball. We talk hardcore Georgia football designed for the most die-hard Georgia fans out there. So if that's something that you are into and that's what you're looking for in your Georgia football coverage, make sure to subscribe to this channel right now. We've got a ton of great content over the next couple of weeks leading up to this season. And of course, we'll have you guys covered throughout the 2024 season as well. Got a couple of film session videos breaking down the Clemson offense and defense coming up starting later this week, going into next week as well. So you don't want to miss that. Subscribe right now, like the videos, comment, all that's greatly appreciated. I think you will enjoy that content. And make sure to check out the Glory UGA podcast for a lot more coverage of Georgia football. Wherever you get your podcast, Spotify, Apple, wherever, we've got you guys covered. But all right, guys, let's actually talk some ball today. Fall camp is officially in the books. Classes started at UGA last Wednesday, which is really at the end of fall camp. Kirby says, it's the end of the second scrimmage, so we'll take Kirby for his word. The second scrimmage is over, so now fall camps is officially in the books. And look, guys, we have learned a lot about this Georgia team through the course of fall camp over the past 3 weeks. And we've covered a lot of that here on this podcast. I had the opportunity to go to practice a couple weeks back. We did a full recap episode detailing everything that I saw at Georgia's practice a couple weeks ago. So if you missed that, check that video. I think you guys will like that. But we've learned a lot. And we actually also now have some clarity around some of the biggest questions that at least I had, I think a lot of you also had, about this Georgia team heading into the 2024 season. So to put a nice bow on all that, to really recap everything that we learned throughout the past couple of weeks, I have put together my final depth chart projection for this 2024 Georgia football team heading into Week 1, that big-time matchup against Clemson inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium. So let's go ahead, guys. Let's dive into this. We're going to start with the offense. We'll go position by position offensively. Then we'll head over to the defensive side of the ball as well. We're going to start at the most important position on any team, which, of course, is the quarterback position. And I don't want to spend much time on this, guys, because it's really pretty cut and dry here, right? There's not much mystery around this position. Carson Beck is obviously QB1. Might very well be the best quarterback in the country. We know that. I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. QB2, behind Carson Beck, I think that was maybe a little bit more up in the air, but it was really Gunnar Stockton's job to lose. He's now going into his third year in this system. No, hasn't played a lot, but has been in our system for a long time. Now, I told you guys what I saw at practice a couple weeks ago was Gunnar Stockton really struggled. But I told you at the time that might have just been an isolated setting, one practice. There's a lot of practices that go on through the course of fall camp, and I saw that one, right? And I told you, though, what I saw with my own two eyes out there is I was concerned with what I saw from Gunnar Stockton. Accuracy was very erratic. Decision-making was downright terrifying at times for me out there. But again, one practice, and apparently what we've heard since that point from people I trust, Gunnar has looked better. He's looked better. Look, he does have more of a grasp on the offense, obviously, than the other two contenders would be Jaden Rashada coming over from Arizona State and Ryan Puglisi as a true freshman coming in from the state of Connecticut. So Gunnar's a talented player. He has a different skill set than Carson. He's much more mobile. We saw that in the Orange Bowl against Florida State. He's certainly not as polished as Carson is, or he would be the starter, right? But I'll also say this about Gunnar. I will stand by this. What I've seen from him, not just at practice a couple weeks ago, but going back to G-Day, going back to when I've seen him in games, he's just not where Carson was entering year 3, right? When Carson was entering his third year in the system, that was 2022, right? Remember, early that year, really most that year, we were blowing teams out. We would bring Beck in, midway-ish through the third quarter in a lot of those games, and we weren't just having him turn around and hand the ball. We were allowing Carson to run our offense. We were not just sitting on the ball trying to run the clock. We let the guy run the offense, and he looked the part. That's why I spent the entire 2023 offseason leading up to last year telling everyone who would listen that Carson Beck was going to be a big-time player for Georgia. And, yeah, he kind of ended up being that type of guy for us because I had seen it. I haven't seen that from Gunnar Stockton yet. Doesn't mean he can't do it. And I've said many times, I'll say it again here for you guys that want to kill me, so I'm just hating on Gunnar. I am not hating on Gunnar Stockton. I've been watching this kid for a long time. I used to watch him at Rabun County, man. Like I've been a big fan of this kid for a long time. I was excited when we flipped him from South Carolina years ago now. And he's a good dude, man. Like this guy, he's a country boy. He's a Georgia kid. I root for Georgia kids. I'm a Georgia guy. I can't say I'm a Georgia kid anymore, but I'm a Georgia guy. So I root for those kids, man. And Gunnar has stuck around. He could have left. He could have left, taken his ball, gone home, gone somewhere else, started somewhere else. But he didn't. I respect the heck out of that. So I want good things to happen for Gunnar Stockton. I don't like having to say anything negative about the kid. I don't like having to critique his game like that, but I also have to be objective. That's what I try to do here. I try to give you guys my true, unfiltered, legitimate take. I'm not trying to be a homer here. I'm a Georgia guy. I'll own that, but I try to be as objective of a Georgia guy as I can. And objectively speaking, I just haven't really quite seen it from Gunnar Stockton at the college level. But allegedly over the past couple of weeks, when my eyes weren't watching, he's looked better and better and gotten more comfortable. And I hope to God that's the case. I hope what I saw a couple weeks ago was just an isolated bad practice. It happens. Everybody has them. Even Carson Beck has those. I just didn't see that, right? So Gunnar is going to be the guy. He's going to be the number 2 quarterback because almost by default, really, he is the guy who's been in the system for 3 years. You have 2 other guys. Jaden Rashada coming over from Arizona State was a highly touted guy coming out of high school. We all know the Florida drama, and I guess Miami has done there a little bit, and that's still unfolding right now. He's got a lawsuit against Florida and Billy Napier. It's just a weird situation. He started a couple games at Arizona State last year, got banged up, got hurt, missed most of the rest of the year, came back late in the year. But this is a talented guy, but when you're playing the quarterback position, it's really tough, man, to be a summer enrollee and then try to, certainly to contend for a starting job, which was never on the table this year for Rashad, and he knew that. He understood that coming in. But even the second string job, because you're just so far behind from a knowledge of the offense standpoint, you just don't know what's going on as much as the guy who's been here now for 3 years. I'm high on his ability level. I think he'd be a really good player. I think he'll be firmly in that competition going into the 2025 season, but I don't think he's ready right now to be the number 2 guy, at least right now. Middle of the year, we'll see. I don't know, but going to week 1, he's not there. Ryan Puglisi is a guy that I'm very, very high on. I love this kid. He's just a grinder. He's going to go out there. He's going to work, and he's going to improve. He's going to develop. I think he has a bright future here in Athens. He will certainly, like Rashad, be a big part of that 2025 competition, but he's not there yet, guys. So he was an early enrollee, which is great. It would give you a chance to maybe sort of kind of contend for that number 2 job, but he also missed almost all of spring practice with a stress fracture. So as a guy who was, I don't want to say raw, but certainly wasn't fully polished coming out of high school. He was kind of late to football-ish and starting there in Connecticut. You know, it's a different level of football. So he needed time to develop. But he didn't get those developmental reps during the spring, which put him behind. He was there learning, listening in meetings, but you're not actually going through practice. You're not getting those reps. So that set him behind and really took away any opportunity he had to maybe even really contend for that number 2 quarterback job. When you watch him, though, man, the ball flies off his hands, got a live arm, really athletic kid, smart kid from what I understand, just one of those winners. When you hear anyone that knows the guy talk about him, his coaches, whoever, this guy, he seems to have that kind of it factor, but he's just not ready right now. He's not ready. Next year, all bets are off. We'll see. But right now, he's not that guy. So Gunnar Stockton, we quarterback 2 behind Carson Beck as QB1 for the Georgia Bulldogs. All right, let's go to the running back position. At the top here, I think it's pretty clear cut. Trevor Etienne coming from Florida. We went and got this guy to be the number 1 back. That's why he came. And he's made no bones about that, man. Like when he's been interviewed, he's basically, I think it was during the spring practice, he was talking about like why he came from Florida. He's like, look, I could have the opportunity to stay at Florida and continue to split reps, but why don't I just come to this place where they win all the time? And oh yeah, I might also be the number 1 back. So he's been that guy. Even going back to spring practice, I know he had the little slip up there with the traffic offense, and that kind of got him in the doghouse a little bit later on in spring practice. But prior to that, like he was the guy you're hearing all the talk about during spring practice, and that's really continued throughout fall camp. And I saw him at practice on a couple weeks back. He was the first guy out there with the number 1 offense, which wasn't surprising. He's a guy that has a lot of experience in the SEC, about 1,500 yards total rushing in his first years over at Florida, in a kind of a 1-2 punch role there with Montrell Johnson with the Gators. But now he is going to be our top option. This is a guy that's he's explosive. Like he has a little bit of a gear, an extra gear that some of the backs that we've had in recent years haven't really had. He's really a dynamic, electric in open space, elusive in space, can be a weapon on the backfield. So I've been very high on this guy for a long time, and I am very, very excited that he is a Georgia Bulldog, and I fully anticipate him being the first back out there with the number one offense when we open that game against Clemson. Now, number two back, now this is where we get like, okay, there's a little bit of a question here. Branson Robinson, as I told you guys after that practice, looked ridiculously good considering he's coming off a year-long injury. And that was somewhat surprising because you don't really know. I didn't really know what to expect. I don't know if I was surprised. I didn't know what to expect, and I didn't expect to see Branson look like he did. I guess we can say that. Moderately surprised. To me, when I was out there at practice, if I had not known that Branson Robinson had gotten hurt about a year ago, I would never in 100 years have guessed that guy was coming off an injury. He looked like he was going 100 miles an hour. He was playing full speed, not favoring his leg in any way. This guy looked the part. I didn't see him go through like full contact. They weren't in full pads yet, so I can't say that he's like pre-injury Branson, like that version of him. I don't know that yet, but what I could see, he looked pretty close to it. And Branson Robinson was in line to be our feature back heading into the 2022 season, or the 2023 season, prior to suffering that injury, which was really unfortunate. So he's back in the fold here, but I've been telling you guys about Nate Frazier really since I saw the kid a couple weeks ago. And everything I've heard since then from people I trust has really echoed everything I saw with my own two eyes. It's and I saw it, man, so I believe what I saw, but everything I've heard since then just kind of reinforced that. Nate Frazier is a dude. He is, in my opinion, I know this is maybe being a little aggressive because I have only seen him at practice one time, but I also was very familiar with this guy coming to high school, Mater Dei High School in California, the number 2 running back in the country, top 50 overall guy. I didn't see all the running backs in the 2024 class, but the guys I did watch, Georgia was recruiting, he was hands down the best option out there. So I was thrilled to get him, very familiar with this game. We did a breakdown of him, going back to the actual signing day back in February. So I've loved this kid, but you don't know, man. We talk about true freshman. He wasn't an early enrollee either. He wasn't here for the spring. He was a summer guy. So learning the offense, picking up blitzes, pass pro, all that kind of stuff. That's the stuff you don't really know. But what I can tell you is when I was at practice, this guy was the one player that stood out above all others. Offense, defense, special teams, I do not care. He's the guy that caught my eyes more than anybody else. I mentioned Trevor Etienne has an extra gear relative to the other running backs that we've had in recent years. Yeah, I believe he does. Nate Frazier has an even higher gear. He has yet another gear that I think is above what Trevor Etienne has. And that doesn't mean he's better than Trevor Etienne right now, but what I'm ready to say, I know it's one practice, I believe he has the potential to be the best running back that Georgia has had since DeAndre Swift. That's my opinion. Now, I know that's 5 or so years, but he's that dude. He is that kind of guy. He is explosive. He is electric. He has this shiftiness and that you don't see that type of short area quickness with that home run speed this guy has. I mean, it's uncanny, guys. The twitch he has, he's the twitchiest running back we've had since, certainly Swift. I'm trying to think of a guy before Swift that would come close to the kind of twitchiness that Nate Frazier has. Along with that, I'm just talking electric home run speed, guys. He hits that, he has that acceleration, he just puts another gear, and you don't touch the man. And he's not a small guy either. He's 5'10", yeah, okay, he's not the tallest guy in the world. He's 210 pounds, man. This guy, we weren't full pads, but even out there in shells, he was running through people. He's going 100,000 miles an hour. And everything I've heard since then is this guy is the real deal. Again, just reinforcing what I already saw with my own two eyes. So if he keeps doing that over and over, in our 2 scrimmages, I wasn't there, can't say with my own 2 eyes, from people that I trust, he was a standout at both scrimmages. Got banged up apparently a little bit in Saturday's scrimmage, but came back out. It was the black jerseys, but came back out. I think it seems like he should be fine. But I'm telling you, this guy is going to play against Clemson. I don't know how much he'll play week 1, but by the time we get to, the middle of the schedule, by the time we get to October-ish, this guy might be playing like 25 snaps a game. That would not surprise me. He's just too talented, too dangerous to keep off the field. So I love Branson Robinson, and that's the hard thing. It's like, we got Trevor Etienne. He's going to be running back 1. You got Branson, who was in line to be running back 1 last year, still an incredibly talented player in his own right. Yes, coming off injury, but he's still awesome. How do we get enough carries for all these guys? There's a lot of mouths to feed here, and that's the question that I'm not paid to answer that. Our coaches get paid millions and millions of dollars to answer that question. So I don't know exactly how it's going to shake out week 1, but I'm just telling you, Branson Robinson will play. Nate Frazier is going to play, and we're at the very least going to have certain packages for him, trying to get this guy in space, whether it's in the pass game, the run game, whatever. This guy is legit. Just trust me on that. So that's kind of the running back room right now. You can say Roger Robinson too. I mean, I don't want to leave him out. I'm just really kind of trying to do a two deep right now. Roger Robinson would certainly be in the conversation, but Rod looks like he's probably not going to be available week 1. He suffers some sort of injury. I think it's a lower extremity injury. Not exactly sure what's going on there, but he's been out for a little while now. He was not active during the scrimmage on Saturday. So right now, it doesn't look like he's going to be available week 1. So I don't know where that puts him right now, but he had a really great spring, had a really strong fall camp leading up to the injury. I mean, he was looking good out there when I was at practice. So Rod's going to get carries too, and that's what I'm talking about. Like, we have all these mouths to feed. How do we make that happen, right? And Cash Jones is a guy that can be an effective running back as well. So we got a lot of options there, but Etienne I think is going to be at the top, and you got Branson Frazier kind of 1A, 1B behind Trevor Etienne. All right, let's go to the receiver position here. At the X receiver position, we know this is where Ra Thomas was slated to play. He's no longer with the team, so he's out of the equation. So what do? Well, it looks like Dylan Bell is going to be the starter at X. And I thought it might be Colby Young, the transfer from Miami, but I also thought Dylan Bell had a shot because he's got the kind of body. He's strong enough, physical enough to be able to get off press coverage at the line of scrimmage. I think we had enough options at Z if Arian Smith could step up, which it seems like he has. Fingers crossed, tentatively kind of stepped up a little bit. I thought Dylan Bell had a shot there, and that is really been the case since the start of fall camp. He's been the starter at the X receiver position. Colby Young has kind of been backing him up, which kind of makes sense. Colby Young still, even though he was here during the spring, he's still new to the offense, still learning what we're doing. I mean, both Ra Thomas and Dom Lovett were here last spring, and Lovett was more ready to play week 1 than Thomas was. It took Ra time himself to get ready, even once we got into last season. So Colby Young is still a work in progress, learning our system, all those kind of things. Plus, he's also been battling an injury of sorts. He has not been available, being a full participant in either of the scrimmages. So I think if he was going to try to contend for that spot and like take that number 1 spot from Dylan Bell and show he was the guy at X, I think that really hampered his ability to do that. Now, I still believe in what Colby Young can bring to the table. I believe this guy has legitimate alpha number 1 wide receiver type potential. I've been saying that since the day we signed him, and I will stick to that. Now, will he reach that potential? That's something we don't know. Like, we got to find out. And the fact that he's come over from a team in Miami to a new system. Now, is there some carryover between what Miami does and what we do? Yeah, some, but it's still a new system, okay? It's not as much of an adjustment as going from the air raid like Ra Thomas did to our system, but there's still an adjustment period there, and you got Dylan Bell, who's now been Dylan's going in his 3rd year. I know he wasn't a full-time receiver last year, but he played a lot as a true freshman when A.D. Mitchell went down with his injury in the 2nd week of that season. So Dylan's been around for a while, and he showed the ability late last year when he was playing more receiver to be a playmaker out there. And the guy, he's just kind of a jack of all trades, but he's a really strong receiver as well. So right now, I would say Dylan Bell is a starter X with Colby Young behind him if he can get healthy. If not, like maybe Nitro Tuggle, true freshman. Maybe we throw like London Humphreys over there. That's where like losing Ra Thomas at the top, it doesn't kill us because you have some guys. I think Dylan Bell, Colby Young, when healthy, can be really just as effective, if not more effective, than Ra Thomas. Where losing Ra hurts us is when it comes to depth at the X position. We don't have as many bodies, like X bodies on the roster. We have plenty of slots and Zs. X's don't have as many of those guys right now. So that's where it hurts us. But if Bell and Young can stay healthy, that's a really strong duo there. And if Young does somehow step up at some point in the season, become that guy X, well, Bell will just slide over and be the starting Z. He's going to start somewhere. Like, that's how strongly I feel about Dylan Bell right now. Then the Z receiver, Arian Smith, does look like he's finally taking that step. And I am rooting for this guy. Just like I'm rooting for Gunnar Stockton, I'm rooting for Arian Smith. I say this all the time when I talk about this guy. He just seems to be a great young man. Everyone that I know who's around the program, who knows these guys, talks about how great of a teammate he is and how hard this guy works. So I want it for him, man. And it just hasn't happened for him. Injuries were a big part of that. He was really raw coming to high school, needed the reps in practice, wasn't getting the reps at practice because he was injured. That's unfortunate. So it's taking him some time, but he's going into year 5. I wasn't sure he would come back this year, man. I thought he might be transferred out and go somewhere else. I didn't know what was going to happen, but he decided to come back. And you got to root for the man. You got to root for the guy. And I know he's had some drops. He's also made some huge plays for Georgia. I think he's had 20 receptions in his career. I think he's averaging like 26, 27 yards per reception, though. So he hasn't made a ton of plays for Georgia through his first 4 years, but the plays he has made have been massive plays. You remember the Ohio State game, 2 massive receptions in that game. Obviously, one that got us right back in that game. The SEC Championship game last year made a huge catch in that game to set up a score. I wish it would have been a touchdown, but at least set up a score. And so he's made those kind of impact plays. I think 10 of his 20 receptions have gone for 31 or more yards, if I remember correctly. And when I did the math, I think it was 4 or 5 of his 20 receptions going for 51 or more. So big playability in spades. It's the little things that Arian Smith has had to really polish up on. Become more of a true receiver. It's what he needed reps for. And it seems like now going into his second year being fully healthy, fingers crossed, they say he's healthy, he's done more of those things. Now, will he ever be a dynamic blocker for us on the perimeter? No, probably not. He's not the biggest guy, but he can be functional out there. He can be good enough. I mean, Ladd McConkey was a good blocker and wasn't the biggest guy out there. We all know that. And has he expanded his route tree? It certainly seems the case. Is he being more consistent catching the football? That seems to be the case. So all signs are pointing to Arian Smith having a breakout year for Georgia. Now, what does breakout year mean for a guy who's only got 20 catches his entire career? It could mean like 20, 25 catches this year. To me, that's a breakout year for Arian Smith when you kind of basically double your career receptions in 1 year. So I don't expect him to be the feature guy in this offense, but I do believe when he's on the field, he poses a threat that every defensive coordinator has to acknowledge. You have to respect it because that dude can just run right past anyone you have out there. We're talking a 10-1, 100-meter guy, okay? This is a legit track speed type guy, one of the fastest players in all of college football. So if he could just round out his game, which it seems like he's been doing, he can be a major threat for Georgia at that Z receiver position. Behind him right now, it seems like London Humphreys, the transfer from Vanderbilt, is really starting to emerge. I like this guy. He was a freshman at Vandy last year, made an impact for that team with a horrific quarterback situation, but he's a pretty big body, about 6'2", 205, 210 pounds. Very, very good speed for a guy that size. I think he could potentially play some X if we needed him to. But it looks like he's worked himself right in contention there as that number 2 guy behind Arian Smith, and he might eat more and more into Arian's reps if we get into week 1 and he started to make plays. Maybe Arian's got some of the dropsies again. Like, you don't know, but I'm high on London Humphreys. I think that guy's going to be a big part of what we do offensively. One more name to mention here. I know we're going too deep, but just kind of a sleeper here at the Z position. We'll talk about him in a minute. Anthony Evans, who is a slot guy by trade. But I mentioned this when I did my recap episode of the practice I went to. Anthony Evans, I didn't count every single rep. You're not allowed to take notes that when you're at practice. If you've ever been to Georgia practice, you know what I'm talking about. You can't take notes. You can't have your phone out or they'll kick you out of there. So I'm trying to make mental notes, and I couldn't keep track of every single rep, okay? I tried. You're watching the 1s over here, 2s over there, we're 2-spot, and it's really difficult, all right? There's a lot going on at the Kirby Smart practice. We don't waste any time. Don't waste any reps. But based on just my rough estimates, I would argue that Anthony Evans was getting more reps at receiver with the number 1 offense than probably anybody out there. And there's a number of things you can read into that. What I tend to read into that, and it's just me putting my own thoughts in there, I tend to read into that we think very highly of Anthony Evans. We think this guy can help us win. We want to get him ready. So as a guy who's going in only a second year in this program, he needs reps. He didn't get a lot of reps last year, guys. Not meaningful reps. Late in the year, you saw some things. The SEC championship game, the punt return, you saw some good positive plays. You saw a touchdown on the slot fade against Florida State. But this guy needs to continue to develop. And you kind of know what you have in Dylan Bell to a degree. You know what you have to a degree in Arian Smith, guys like that. Dominic Lovett, certainly, right? But a guy like Anthony Evans who doesn't have the built-in reps, and you need to continue to develop this guy because you know he can help you. You believe in this guy. You believe he's a major threat for your offense. He's just got to continue to get up to speed. I think that's why you see him get as many reps as he did, at least when I was there at practice. Again, almost exclusively with the number 1 offense. So he's going to be a major part of what we do with this Georgia offense. It'll be partly at the slot receiver position, which again is more of like his natural position. But I do think he's so dynamic that you're going to see him potentially line up at times at Z receiver. It's going to be tough to keep this guy out the field. And the problem for him is you got Dominic Lovett, who's our most experienced and probably our top option receiver coming into this season. He is a slot guy. Like Dominic Lovett is a slot guy through and through. So when you have that guy ahead of you, what's your path on the field? Like, yes, you're going to rotate him from time to time. You can give Dom a breather here and there. But we need Anthony Evans on the field more than just every now and then we're giving Dominic Lovett a breather. Because Anthony Evans is that kind of playmaker. He's that kind of playmaking ability. So I think there's going to be a strong likelihood that we're going to work him into the Z receiver position as well to try to get this guy on the field more consistently than we would be able to if he was just exclusively playing slot receiver. So mentioning slot here real quick, I just went through that. Dominic Lovett's the guy. I do think Dominic Lovett is going to be our number 1 option, certainly to open the season. He's a guy last year when we didn't have Ladd McConkey, when we didn't have Brock Bowers, and even if they were playing, they weren't fully healthy. He's the guy that kind of stepped up, and it was more the feature player in the passing game without those two. Now with those two guys in the NFL doing their thing, it just stands to reason that Dominic Lovett is going to be that guy, at least early in the year, for this Georgia offense. certainly more cohesiveness there with him and Carson Beck than anyone else in the receiver room. And even tight end room as well, if you want to throw them in there. So I fully expect him to be the number one guy. You saw that at G-Day. You heard about him all through spring practice. Like, he was the guy. You've heard the same things at fall camp. The scrimmage, what I heard at the scrimmage is like, this guy just got a handful of reps early on, and we're like, okay, man, chill out. Because, like, we know what we have in him. Like, he's the guy. We don't want him to get hurt too close to the season right now for that. So Lovett's going to be the guy. Very excited about him. Let's also not forget, I've said it many times, Dominic Lovett led Missouri in receiving in 2022. He's a proven commodity in the SEC. He, I believe, is going to be that guy for us this season. It's well documented. We only have had one receiver in the history of Georgia football. It's incredulous, man. It's borderline impossible that this is a real stat. Only one receiver ever to go over 1,000 yards. Terrence Edwards back in 2002, right? Everyone always asks me before the season, hey, is there a chance that anyone goes over 1,000 yards? There's always a very popular bold prediction in my bold prediction episode last week, so if you missed that, check that out. But it's always a very popular bold prediction that insert receiver A is going to go for over 1,000 yards this year. And I've done that myself plenty of times. I didn't do it this year because I do it every year, and like we're gonna go in a different direction. But if you ask me who is the guy that's most likely to be the second receiver in Georgia history to go for 1,000 yards in a single season, I would say this year is Dominic Lovett. Now, do I think he will do that? Probably not, because I think we just have too many mouths to feed, whether in the receiver position, the tight end position, and there's nobody that right now going into the year is like head and shoulders above better than everybody else. Like, there's no AJ Green. We're like, okay, that's the guy. There's no Brock Bowers. Like, yep, that's the guy. We don't have a guy like that. We have a lot of really, really good players, but they're all like relatively equal-ish footing. So I don't think that we're going to have one guy go for 1,000. I hope I'm wrong, man. It'd be great if he was that kind of guy. But regardless, 1,000 yards or not, Dominic Lovett's going to be great for us this year. I think he has a big year for Georgia. And then, of course, Anthony Evans is going to be behind him in that slot position. Tight end, speaking of Brock Bowers, no longer here. I'm sad, man. Like, it breaks my heart. I'm never going to see Brock Bowers in the red and black again. It was tough to see him go out the way he went out, but I will cherish Brock Bowers for the rest of my life. The greatest player that I've seen in my lifetime at Georgia. Like I've said many times, he is the Herschel Walker of my generation. I'm not quite old enough to have watched Herschel live, so I know that's how people feel about Herschel who were there for that. I wasn't there for that. That's kind of how I feel about Brock Bowers. So big shoes to replace here, to say the least. Now, I spent the entire offseason telling you guys I thought Benjamin Urosik, the transfer from Stanford, was going to be that guy. I'm still very, very high on Benjamin Urosik. I think by the time we get to the Alabama game, late September, early October, this guy is going to have more of a, I don't know if it'll be a feature role, but he'll have more of a prominent role in the Georgia offense. Okay, I know you guys are probably tired of me saying this by now, but I know we have a lot of new listeners, so I'm gonna say it again one last time for anyone who has not heard me say this. All right, there have only been only three tight ends over the past 3 years that have put up more yards receiving from the tight end position than Benjamin Urosik. Those three tight ends, Brock Bowers, Michael Mayer from Notre Dame, Dalton Kincaid from Utah, who's now starting for Buffalo Bills. That's it, guys. That is your list. He would be number 4 on that list, and I don't think any person in college football really knows that. Why? Because he played at Stanford. All right, he's playing for an irrelevant team out there in the Pacific Northwest-ish, the West Coast, we'll call it. Geography might not be my thing. The West Coast-ish, right? And not only is it an irrelevant program, nobody cares about them. Their own fans don't even care about them. So he was going under the radar, right? Nationally speaking. But this guy can play. Just turn on the tape, man. The guy can play. The problem for him, and this was my hold up, is that he was not here for the spring. I wish to God he was here for the spring. I think if he was here for the spring, he would probably be our number 1 receiving option at tight end this year. But he wanted to graduate from Stanford. Can't fault the guy. I get it, man. Makes a lot of sense. So he's a summer guy. He was doing like virtual meetings with our coaching staff, and that's great and all. It's not the same as being out there going through practice, man. It's just not. So there's a learning curve there. And now they did a lot of the same things at Stanford with him that we did with Brock Bowers in our offense, which was one of the reasons why I thought it'd be more of a seamless transition. But it's different terminology, different formation. Like, it's just a little bit different, right? So it's taken some time for him to get up to speed, which is natural. I know he's a Stanford guy, but hey, you're still learning things for the first time. So I don't know if he'll be out there. If we were in 12 personnel to open the game, will Benjamin Urosik be out there? Right now, I would say probably not. But again, that's not to say come middle of the season that he doesn't become that guy. I just think he's a dynamic weapon, guys. I'm just telling you, I've seen enough of him to know what this guy is capable of. But we also have some really good tight ends in our room. We've been saying it for years. It's the best tight end room in America. We recruit the tight end position. I know people want to make a lot about our receiver recruiting. That's fine. But the reason one of the reasons we have issues recruiting receivers, our top line receivers, is that we have these tight ends that we keep recruiting, these 5-star guys, number 1, number 2 tight ends in the country. And our tight end room is loaded. So you got to feed these guys. When you have Brock Bowers, I mean, you throw the ball to Brock Bowers, you'd be crazy. It'd be a fireable offense to not do that. So, of course, opposing teams, opposing coaches, they negatively recruit against us using that information and say, oh, well, Georgia doesn't throw to receivers. Well, maybe not as much as other teams because we have these tight ends. So receiver recruiting, I get the consternation around that, but our tight end recruiting has been elite, better than anyone in the country over the past 4 to 5 years. Todd Hartley is a machine at that position, recruiting that position. So Oscar Delp, by the way, a former number 1 overall tight end in the country years ago. Lawson Lucky, another highly rated guy out of Norcross High School. Those guys are on this roster. Oscar Delp started every game for us last year, I believe. The issue with Oscar, okay, is that he did not play the mover tight end role last year, the kind of hybrid tight end role that Brock Bowers played, right? He was the inline guy filling in for Darnell Washington, which is not really what he was built for coming into college. He was more of what Brock was coming into college. Like, he was a receiving guy, but he's got to hit a good frame, and we got Brock. But we love Oscar. We know this guy's talented, so we got to get him on the field somehow. So we got to bulk him up and get him ready to play the kind of inline tight end role, which is what he did last year. And he struggled early because that's not what he'd been doing in most of his career. But he got better and better. He's pound for pound now one of the strongest guys on the team. And I just have a hard time thinking that we're going to move him from that role, because if you take him out of that role, can Oscar Delp play the role that Brock Bowers played for us the past couple years? Yes, I think he could. He has that kind of athleticism. He's that type of receiving threat. Yes, I fully believe he could. But if you remove him from that inline tight end role, who plays that spot? Who plays inline tight end for us? I think Lucky's kind of a tweener. He could play inline. He could play that hybrid spot, but he's maybe not the best fit at either spot, but he can do a lot of both things for us. But I think Delp, you spent an entire year grooming this guy to play that position, and now you're going to start all over from scratch with somebody else at that spot? I don't think so. So I think Oscar's going to still play that inline tight end role. What I saw at practice a couple weeks ago is that, yes, that's very much how we're still using him. But I do also think that he'll get more looks in the passing game, even though he doesn't play like exactly the mover tight end role. So you got Oscar. Lawson Lucky also looked really good when I was out there at practice. There's some really positive things about him. I mean, let's not forget about Lawson Lucky, guys. You go back, rewind the clock to last spring, going into 2023 season, last fall camp before he got injured. He was the true freshman that everyone was talking about. Like, he was the one that was making all the waves and opening eyes and all those kind of things. Then he got hurt about halfway through fall camp last year, missed about a month, and then, the rest is history. But if he hadn't gotten hurt, like, who's to say he could have made more of an impact early on last year, had more of a role on our team. So he's that guy. He is a legitimately very good tight end. So if I had to project right now, I would say Oscar Delp is an inline tight end. Lawson Lucky to start the season as that mover tight end, but I do think Benjamin Rosick will rotate in liberally right there with Lawson Lucky. So I think those are your 3 tight ends that you will see Georgia play this year. All right, let's move to the offensive line. Try to run through this one. I know I'm kind of going a little long here. Try to run through this a little bit more quickly. Left tackle, Ernest Green, returning starter, as an all-SEC freshman, started all 14 games for Georgia last year. 6'4", 320, really good feet. Struggled at times early last year, but he was a first-year starter, and he missed most of his true freshman season with a back injury. He had back surgery as a true freshman, which is just tough. But he got better and better as the season went on, and I think he's going to have a really strong second year as a starter for Georgia this year at that left tackle spot. Monroe Freeling, who is now a rising sophomore, was a 5-star guy, according to a fringe 5-star guy, depending on what recruiting service you look at. He was a highly recruited guy, was in the rotation at times last year, late in the year when Amarius Mims went out, but he was never the starter. But he's a guy that's a high level of potential. He was really thin coming into the college level. He had to gain weight, but to his credit, he has done that. He's up to a good 315 right now. He's a tall, long guy, man, a really athletic guy. Maybe our most athletic tackle out there with his left or right. He'll be a starter for us next year. He was in competition for a starting job this year. I don't think he's going to win either one of them, but he'll be really the backup of left tackle and right tackle. At left guard, you're going to have the 1-2 punch of Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, who were there last year when we had the injury to Marius Mims. You move Xavier Truss over to right tackle, and now you got a whole left guard where you plug in Dylan Fairchild, Micah Morris, both guys kind of neck and neck. Fairchild was a guy that had 10 starts last year, but Morris rotated a lot with him, and he's kind of like our third guard. I mean, we have 3 guards that we really truly trust as starters, whether it's Dylan Fairchild, Tate Ratledge, Micah Morris. Those are 3 guys that we trust to start for us, and it's almost like 3 starters. You can't really have 3 starters at guard, but you kind of get the idea there. Then at center, Jared Wilson had missed really all of fall camp up until this week, all right? And I was very anxious about this. So when I was at practice a couple weeks ago, I knew nothing about the Jared Wilson injury at that time. I go out there at practice, I see him out there, but I see Tate Ratledge go out there with number one offense, which you expect, but not at the center position. So I kind of rub my eyes, do a double take. Am I seeing what I'm seeing here? I guess Tate Ratledge playing center. Yep, there he is, bending over, snapping the ball to Carson. What's going on here? Where's Jared Wilson? Oh, there he is. He's out there, but he's not practicing. What's going on? And then, of course, you find out that he's been dealing with a little bit of an injury. We didn't know exactly what it was. It sounds like, from what I've been able to gather, that it was an Achilles strain-ish, which is tough, man. Those things can be very, very difficult. So we've been keeping him out, but I was concerned about that. Look, I like Tate Ratledge. I love Tate Ratledge, but he doesn't really play center for us. He's more of a guard. And I've been very high on Jared Wilson. I think this guy has the physical tools to be on the field between the white lines better than Cedric Van Pran-Granger. I believe that he does. Now, leadership and experience doesn't have that, but this guy is insanely athletic. His ability to get up to the second level, I think, is better than that of Cedric Van Pran-Granger. And said it was really good for us. Don't get me wrong, man. He's awesome. But I think Jared Wilson is that kind of guy. I think with a good year, I think Jared Wilson could just declare for the NFL draft. That's how highly I think of this guy. His athleticism is off the charts, but he wasn't out there practicing, and that's concerning when he's a guy that hasn't really played a lot of meaningful snaps for you, all right? So I was concerned there. But good news is, not only was he available at the scrimmage yesterday, apparently what I heard is that he played a lot, which is great news. That's great news. Seems like now we're 2 weeks out. He'll be okay. Should be good to go. Barring any sort of setback. Man, again, fingers crossed. Barring a setback, he should be good to go to start week 1 against Clemson, which is great. But Tate Ratledge has got a lot of work with the number one offense at center. So I think if Wilson could not go, if something happened to Wilson, I do think it's pretty clear when we saw it at practice, Ratledge would slide over and he would be the guy at the starting center spot, and we would just insert Micah Morris into right guard, which is what we saw at practice when Jared Wilson was not there. Drew Bobo has gotten some reps there as well at center, but it's kind of like that situation. Remember Carson Beck to open the 2022 season, Kirby said straight up, directly at a press conference that Carson Beck was our number 2 quarterback, right? Well, what happens when J.T. Daniels goes down? Oh yeah, the guy you said was number 2, all of a sudden it's not the guy that's going in. The guy that's played for you, that you trust, you know what you have in him in Stetson Bennett. He's the guy they're going to put in there, right? Everyone's freaking out, and it all worked out really, really well, right? So great. And what was that? That was the 2021 season. What am I talking about? Yeah, 2021 season. So we saw that happen. And I think it's kind of like a similar situation here where Drew Bobo, you think he's the number 2 guy at center, but when the number 1 guy actually goes down, you actually slide this other guy over here who you've seen play and you trust more. So I think that's probably what would happen. But Bobo is going to be somewhere in the mix there. I just don't think he would actually go in first if Wilson could not play. I think it would be Tate Ratledge. Then at right guard, yes, you got Tate Ratledge, 28 career starts. I think he's going to be an All-American type player at guard for us this year. Micah Morris, back up at left guard, also back up at right guard. Might have a 3-man rotation of sorts. I think it'd be more of a left guard rotation. I think you want to have Tate out there as much as you possibly can. Then a right tackle, a guy that I wasn't sure would be able to hold on to his spot. I thought if there was somebody a returning starter, an incumbent starter who was maybe most vulnerable to being unseated throughout fall camp, I thought it might be Xavier Truss, because he's a guy I think is more of a true guard, but give the guy credit. He dropped some weight. He wasn't as effective against speed rushers last year. We saw in the SEC Championship game when Marius Moons went down. You got guys out there like Dallas Turner, Chris Braswell. He just couldn't really withstand that type of speed rush. And he's going to face some of those guys this year. James Pierce Jr. from Tennessee. You've got a couple guys at Texas. Anthony Hill Jr. is more an inside linebacker, also rushes off the edge. He's going to have to be more proficient blocking those speed defenders right off the edge. And that's something that he struggled with last year, to be quite frank. But he's dropped some weight. His foot speed has improved. He looked good out there when I saw him at practice. So he is a guy that I fully expect to start week 1. A 6th-year guy now, man. He started 27 of our last 29 games. Between guard and tackle, 27 of 29. He's going to start, guys. He's going to start. But I do like Monroe Freeling. I think Monroe Freeling will play. I think there'll be a rotation there of sorts. How much, I do not know. But he'll be in the mix there. So there is the offense, right? Now let's flip it over to the defensive side of the ball here. And let's start with the defensive line, which is probably where I have my biggest concern here, guys. We've been dealing with, for a position I think had some legitimate questions coming into the season, we're dealing with a lot of injuries there. And that's highly concerning for me, because I've been very open throughout the entire offseason, really going back to the middle of last year, telling you guys the biggest reason why we did not win a national championship and pull off the three-peat, the unprecedented three-peat. In my opinion, the biggest reason we did not do that is we were not as good against the run, and the biggest reason we were not as dominant against the run was we just took a step back on the defensive line. We didn't have those dominant game changers like we had in the previous couple years. Didn't have Jalen Carter, Devontae Wyatt, Jordan Davis, those guys. Didn't have them, right? We're good, just not that good. I thought this year we had a chance to be closer to what we were in 2022 because the guys that were, I think, the most talented players on our defensive line last year were the youngest guys, and they just weren't ready last year. So I was very hopeful that they'd all be ready this year or closer to being ready this year, take another step. And that may well end up happening, but we got some issues here, man. Jordan Hall, we know, has suffered not one, but now two stress fractures, one on each leg. I don't even know how that's possible, man. I know he's a big dude. This is crazy stuff, man. So with the first stress fracture, had surgery, was maybe going to be available for week 1, maybe late in fall camp. Well, that's out the window now. We learned a couple weeks ago that he's got another stress fracture in the other leg, and so now he won't be available until, I don't know, man, like late September, early October, maybe. And what version of him do we get, like in terms of conditioning? I don't know, man. So that sucks because Jordan Hall is a highly talented player, man. That guy was a difference maker type guy coming out of high school. And you saw flashes of it last year in moments, but he was young and had to learn what to do. And just, you can see out there, he wasn't always playing fast because he didn't know what to do, but he was too talented. So you had to put him out there at times. Because we didn't have those major difference makers on the defensive line last year, and you want to get that guy some reps. So I was very hopeful that he would be one of those difference makers for us this year. And maybe he will be. It just won't be the first half of the year. That's unfortunate. Then Warren Brinson, who along with Nazir Stackhouse is a returning fifth-year guy who's played a lot of football for Georgia. Only 4 starts in his career, and those were last year. But he's played a lot of football for Georgia. He's done some really good things for us. And what Nazir Stackhouse and Warren Brinson brought to this defensive line is stability, right? They are stable. We know what we have in those guys. Are either one of them like super elite? No, not really, but that's fine. They're still really good players for us. They give us stability there and give us a chance to have these young guys grow into bigger roles on the team. But Warren Brinson has been out all of fall camp, all right? And he wasn't really doing much at the scrimmage, is what I was told on Saturday. Concerning, because he was a guy I was hoping to be out there. Because again, we are thin right now at defensive line, and we have some talented guys, but we are thin. He's not out there. And he's dealing with an Achilles, what Kirby called Achilles tendonitis. And when I heard that, I knew it was Achilles. I was hoping it was just like a minor strain. When I heard Kirby say tendonitis, my antennas went up. Alarm bells sounding in my head. Because if you're new to the podcast, you don't know me. But if you've been around a long time, you know me. You guys know I like to run. I don't know if I'm a runner, but like I train for half marathons, that kind of stuff, right? Well, I was training for a marathon this winter. I was going to run one in the first weekend of March, and in February, towards the end of my training, I come up with some Achilles tendonitis, and it's brutal. It's one of the most frustrating injuries you can have because it just doesn't really go away. I mean, it was 3 months, guys, 3 months, and mine wasn't like the worst. I mean, I had 3 months until I was able to come back and really do any kind of like the type of running you had to be able to do if you're going to play football. Okay, 3 months. I'm an older guy, all right? I mean, I'm not 22 years old, 23, how old Warren is. I'm not 22, 23, okay? So my body doesn't recover the way that the younger guys do. There's that. But he's also got more weight to carry on than I do. So when I heard Achilles tendonitis, I'm like, oh my God, there's no telling when we'll be ready. And so I don't know, man. I'm not trying to freak anyone out here. I'm just telling you my experience with Achilles tendonitis personally. It's not something you come back from in like 3 or 4 weeks and like be really full speed 100%. It's just not one of those things. So I don't know if Kirby like misspoke there or said like, he heard Achilles and like so he just throws tendonitis out there. I don't know, man. I don't know. But like hearing him say that kind of freaked me out. It kind of concerned me. So I don't know what to expect. You keep hearing from people that, he should be fine week 1. He's trending in the right direction. He's getting closer and closer. He's doing more and more. But I mean, going out there and straining the way you have to in a game against a team like Clemson, I just don't know, man. So I'm not counting on Warren Brinson to be available week 1. Okay. And I hope I'm wrong there. I hope I'm wrong, but that's just where I am right now. But if he's, let's just say for argument's sake, he'll be ready. Okay. He'll be ready. If he's ready, I still think Christian Miller is the guy that's going to start for us at the 3-tech defensive tackle position. I think he's going to be that guy. And he is a guy that I believe very much in. I think this guy is a disruptive force on the interior. He was playing out of position last year, having to play the zero tech because we had nobody behind Nazir Stackhouse. We knew this guy was talented, so we had to get him on the field somehow. But he's like 305 pounds. Like 300 pounds playing the zero tech for us, which is typically the guys that are like Jordan Davis level size, right? 350 pounds ideally, like Jamal Jarrett, who's on the roster right now. We'll talk about him in a minute. Those are kind of guys that we pull and play zero tech. Space eaters, big bodies. That's not what Christian Miller is. He's a 3-tech all the way. He's an explosive, first step, quickness kind of guy, disruptive in the backfield, penetrating ability, plays really good leverage, strong at the point of attack. And he was a guy in his first year of actually playing for us, did some really good things when he actually got to play 3-tech when Warren Brinson dealt with an injury against Ole Miss and Tennessee last year. And now that it looks like able to actually play more of the 3-tech, he is going to have a massive year for us. I truly believe. I did a video back when he was talking about going to the transfer portal, and then he came back from the transfer portal and said, nah, joke's on you guys. I'm actually playing for Georgia again. Great. Awesome. I did a video explaining why that was big news for Georgia. So check that out. I know it's a couple weeks old, couple months old now, but check that out. But I believe in this guy. I think he has high level potential. And I think at the 3-tech, he will be able to realize more of that than he was last year at the 0-tech. So I think he's going to start. He's been the guy getting like all those reps with the number one defense all fall camp because Warren's been out, okay? If Warren's healthy, he'll play, but I think he'll play behind Christian Miller. I think he'll probably be on a snap count, probably coming back if it's Achilles tendonitis or whatever it is with Achilles. You don't want to mess with that, man. And the other guy here at the 3-tech you got to consider is the transfer from South Carolina, Xavier McLeod, who I am also very high on. I was very impressed with what I saw from him. Yeah, against the number 2 offensive line, I get it. But what I saw from him at G-Day was very impressive to me. This guy was making plays, man. Run game, pass game, giving some pass rush. Athletic guy, powerful guy, about 325 pounds, but good athleticism at that size. Can play 3-tech, can play 0-tech. He can function both spots. There's some positional versatility. Love the guy. He's got a lot of reps there at the 3-tech behind Miller with Warren Brinson out. But now McLeod is dealing with some sort of injury. He wasn't practicing at the scrimmage on Saturday, so I don't know what's going on there. I don't know. That's not something we can afford. I don't know what we're gonna do. To be honest with you guys, if Brinson can't go, if McLeod, I know we're 2 weeks out, so I'm hopeful McLeod's just a minor thing and he's fine. He'll be able to go, no problem. And if he's able to play, we're fine. We're fine. But if for some reason Brinson McLeod can't play, we got problems, man. Because you got Christian Miller, love him, guy can't play every snap. Behind him, you've got freshmen, highly talented freshmen. All right, Jordan Thomas, Nazir Johnson, these guys. They've all flashed at times throughout camp. I've heard positive things about them. I saw some good things from when I was at practice, and I'm very high on what they can be. But true freshmen in the trenches, going against grown men, that's a lot to ask week 1, man. That's a lot to ask against a Clemson team that's going to want to run the football. Now, Clemson's offensive line is not elite. It's better than what it was in 2021, but still not elite. That's still not something that I love, man. Like that's concerning to me. So I'm hoping to dear God that we get Warren Brinson and Xavier McLeod back. So they can, if we get one of those guys back for that game, I think we're fine. Because I love Christian Miller, we'll be okay. But we certainly are very thin right now at that 3-tech defensive tackle spot. Nose tackle, we're fine. Nazir Stackhouse, 30 consecutive starts for us. Started every game each of the past 2 years. I thought he was better in 2022 than he was last year. He basically said that as much himself, going back to, I think, spring practice. Or maybe it was bowl practice. He basically said the same thing himself. So recently came back for a 5th year. Nazir Stackhouse is not Jordan Davis, never will be, never was going to be, but he's a really good player in his own right. I thought he was much better late last year. I was excited by what I saw from him at G-Day, and I was very excited about what I saw from him at practice a couple weeks back. He was probably the most effective defensive lineman he was the most effective defensive lineman I saw for us at practice a couple weeks ago. I was very, very, very excited about that, very encouraged by that. And he's a guy that, we weren't in full pads, so there's that, but his ability to control the center, to eat double teams, command double teams, like you're seeing him do things that he's got to be able to do at that spot. So I'm very excited about Nazir Stackhouse. I think he's going to have a big year for Georgia at that 0-tech nose tackle position. Behind him, we need some depth because we need somebody to be able to back him up so we can allow Christian Miller to play the 3-tech, which is where he is most effective. And it appears like Jamal Jarrett is closer to being ready to be that guy. And that's what he was recruited to be. He was recruited to be like the next Jordan Davis. Now, was he ever going to be Jordan Davis? That's a tall task, man. That's a tall task. Big shoes to fill. But Jamal Jarrett is a big body, 6'5", 350 guy that is a prototypical nose tackle in our defense. He just wasn't in shape last year. He had some growing up to do. I told you guys he started to fight with the entire offensive line at practice a couple weeks ago when I was there. I mean, he's just got to grow up some, mature some. And it seems like he's doing more and more of that. But physically, he looks the part. He's gotten in better shape. He's trimmed his body up some. Can play more snaps than he was able to last year, more consecutive snaps than he was able to. But still needs to continue to improve his conditioning. But like, we don't need him to be a starter this year. Nas is going to be that guy. We just need him to come in and play a couple snaps here and there to give Nas a breather. And if he can do that for us, I believe that he can now. I think that's going to be a big help for this Georgia defense. I think he can be an impact player if he continues to grow and develop. He's got that potential. It's just a matter of him getting to that point. So I'm excited about him. We'll see what he can do for us this year. At the 5-tech defensive end, at the top there, I think kind of depends situationally what we want to do. Michael Williams has played that spot each of his first 2 years. That's kind of what he's been doing at Georgia. But we know, much documented, that he is going to be playing a lot more jack linebacker this year. I don't know how that, like what that will look like when we get to actual games. Well, at G-Day, he played mostly 5-tech. So you don't want to show Clemson what you're going to do at G-Day. So he played a lot of 5-tech, which is what he's always done. He will play a lot of jack linebacker this year, but I think situationally he will play the 5-tech as well. When he's not playing jack, it's going to be TID, Tyrion Ingram Dawkins. And guys, I'm telling you, this guy was tough to handle at practice a couple weeks ago. He's another guy like Nate Frazier. Since that point, all I've heard about him is just reinforcing what I saw at practice. And he's a guy who's finally healthy. And he was, I think 247 had him as a 5-star when he was coming out of high school. So he was a fringe 5-star, depending on what service you look at. Highly talented guy. It was a big recruiting win for us to get this guy years ago now. But, he was behind guys like Trayvon Walker, Michael Williams, behind all these like 5-star dudes that are big-time players. But now he's finally got his turn, and now he's fully healthy, right? Last year, he didn't really play in the Florida game, and he wasn't fully healthy. Still dealing with a foot injury the rest of the year, was still effective for us, even though he wasn't healthy. Missed the spring, dealing with a foot injury, recovering from cleaning that up. Is back for fall camp. Has had a really, really strong fall camp. I think this guy's about to break out for Georgia at that 5-tech and give some pass rush. Going to be strong against the run. So I think he's going to be that top guy there when Mikel's not playing 5-tech. And then behind him, you got Gabe Harris, who was recruited initially to Georgia as like a jack linebacker. He was an outside linebacker. And so my concerns about him playing 5-tech, because it's kind of what we were moving him to late last year and throughout spring practice. I was like, he's like 235 pounds-ish. I don't know if he's really big enough to be able to hold up setting the edge there against the run. That was a concern I had. And you guys know how many issues we had defending the perimeter run game last year. But give this guy credit when they just, I think last week, released the new roster, the new weights, all updated the roster with the weights and all that kind of stuff. He was, I think, up to like 250, 255, which is closer to where he needs to be. Still not quite, like Michael, for example, was like 265. Okay, Jonathan Ledbetter back in the day was like 285. Trayvon's like 270, 275. So he needed to kind of be in that range, and he's getting closer to that. I don't know if he'll ever be that big. I don't know if he has the frame for that. But he's gotten big enough. I think he can also be a situational guy for us at the 5-tech, give us a little bit more of a pass rush with that outside linebacker skill set that he's had going back to when he was in high school. So he'll factor in there. Joseph Jonah-Janye, highly touted guy coming out of Texas, out of high school, a 5-star guy himself. And he's a guy that's still relatively new to football, but like physically off the charts, man. Athleticism off the charts. It's just a matter of learning what to do. The thing for JJA, he's got a lot of reps at spring practice because Michael's getting some work with the outside linebackers, and TID was not playing. Gabe Harris has been banged up throughout most of the fall camp. He's just now getting cleared to go full go at fall camp. So JJA, Joseph Jonah-Janye, is going to get a lot of reps during fall camp, going back to spring practice, dealing with because of injuries to other guys at that position, which has certainly helped accelerate his development. So I expect him to be a part of what we do defensively. Will he be the top guy? No, but he'll certainly be a rotational piece for us there at the 5-tech as well. At jack linebacker, I don't exactly know what this will look like because the days of us playing 2 outside linebackers, like we don't play our base 3-4. We have one of these guys on the field at a time, typically speaking, unless we're facing a team that's going 12 personnel. We don't see a lot of teams that do that. But when we are out, so at practice a couple weeks ago, when our offense was in 12 personnel, it was TID at the 5-tech and Michael Williams at jack, okay? But when we were in our nickel package, we take one of the linebackers off the field, you throw in Janelle Aguero as our star position, then what we saw is Michael go to the 5 and Jalen Walker play jack linebacker. So I think it's going to be a very situational position for us this year, like how we control the 5-tech and the jack linebacker position. So I think Michael, if we're in our base, will be the guy at jack. If we're in nickel, I think Michael will probably be playing more 5-tech, and you have Jalen Walker playing that jack linebacker position. And Jalen Walker's playing a little bit of both guys, playing inside and outside. Like he's that kind of tweener. He's a bigger dude than your average inside linebacker, about 240, 245, and he's got just electric pass rush moves. I mean, this guy is a dynamic pass rusher. I think he's probably the best pure pass rusher we have with his explosiveness off the ball, his ability to bend. I mean, this guy is the real deal. He's been using that role as a third down designated pass rusher since he really got here, but he's now going to be in a position where he's going to be playing a lot more this year, guys. I've said it many times. This is the guy on defense that I am most excited about this year. I think he's going to explode onto the scene. He was part of my bold predictions. The guy did not play near enough last year, between 20-25% of our snaps last year. Only played 12 snaps in the SEC Championship game. Got to be on the field more consistently. He's too disruptive, too dynamic, too explosive. He's too good, in short, to not be on the field. So we got to find a way, and our coaches realized that. So when I saw practices, us doing whatever we could to get him on the field, playing inside linebacker, jack linebacker, designated pass rusher on third downs, moving the guy around, doing different things with him. He's going to be a big part of what we do defensively this year. I think he's going to have a breakout year. I truly do believe that double-digit sacks for him is within the realm of possibility, because I think he's going to play a lot more for us. I think he has that kind of ability. So I'm very excited about him. He'll play a lot of jack for us. Chas Chambliss has been banged up, I think dealing with a hamstring. But look, this guy's played a lot of football for us. Is he going to play as much as he did last year? Play like almost a full third of our defensive snaps last year? Probably not. But he's still going to have a role on this team. He's a valuable run defender. Damon Wilson Jr. is kind of the wild card here. A lot like Gabe Harris, he's a guy that needed to add some weight. He needed to gain weight. He was too thin last year to be anything more than a designated pass rusher. We bring him and Jalen Walker in third downs late last year, and he was effective in that role. But he could not actually play jack linebacker on standard downs because he could not hold up against the run. He could not set the edge, was not big enough, strong enough to be able to do that. So it limited his ability to be on the field. So for him to get on the field more consistently, he had to gain weight. And he's another guy, like Harris, who has added weight. He looks like he's back about up to like 250 pounds now, which is big. I mean, he was listed like 235 last year. But if you look at the guy out there on the field, man, I have a hard time believing he was more than like 225, to be honest with you. Just look at the guy on the field. But he's listed at 250 right now, so I think he's put himself in a position to be more of a factor, whether it's standard downs, pass rush roles, like whatever it might be. I think he'll play more than he did last year, but we have a ton of guys at that spot that can do different things for us, and we only typically play one of them at a time. And if you're talking about Jalen Walker and Damon Wilson Jr., they both give us similar things off the edge. And right now, I think Jalen Walker's going to be the guy that plays ahead of him if we're playing on standard downs. I think Damon Wilson will certainly have a role on third downs, but I still just don't know if it's going to be much more than that again this year. So we'll see there. Though I know we're kind of doing two deeps here. One name I got to throw out there. We talked about him a little bit last week. I continue once again this week to hear great things about him, and that is true freshman Quintavious Johnson, who was a former high school quarterback who was never going to play quarterback in high school or at college level, is now playing jack linebacker. And he was a guy that, to be quite honest with you, I didn't expect anything from this year. I thought he was a developmental guy. I was really high on his potential and athleticism. It would take some time. I look to be wrong on that, okay? Because this guy, right, I mean, really from the jump, it sounds like this guy has been a guy that's just been making moves. I would say the first week or so of fall camp, you didn't hear much about him. When I saw him at practice, which is the end of that first week of fall camp, you saw him out there with the twos, and I'm like, okay, like this guy, it's interesting he's out there with the twos, but I don't think too much of him because we're not in full pads, and he's only showing so much. But from that point on, all I've heard about that jack linebacker besides Jalen Walker is like this Quintavious Johnson guy. Like this guy's, he's the real deal, man. So how does it all work together? I don't know. Because you got Mike Kelly, you got Jalen, you got Chaz, you got Damon Wilson Jr., and now Quintavious Johnson is doing the things he's apparently been doing at practice throughout fall camp, at least the last couple weeks of fall camp. It seems like he might be a kind of guy it's hard to keep him off the field. But how do you get him on the field? Like all these different guys, again, we typically play one jack at a time. So I'm very curious to see how that position plays out. I think that's probably the position right now, 2 weeks ahead of the season, I think it's probably the least clarity at. I think it could look a lot of different ways. So that's the one spot I'm not super confident with doing this projection, but that's kind of how I see it shaping up right now. Inside linebacker, pretty clear-cut. Smile Munden missed really all of spring practice, missed the first part of fall camp, but did practice on Saturday during the scrimmage, which is good. That was another guy I was hoping would be out there because I needed to hear him actually making progress and getting out there and doing things, going through actual drills, actual practice. So very good sign that Smile Munden, with his experience, is back in the fold. He should be good to go, it seems like, week 1 against Clemson. If that's the case, he will start, almost certainly. And then you got C.J. Allen as well. I think would be the top two guys at inside linebacker. Behind them, Raylan Wilson and Jalen Walker. The silver lining to Smile Munden's injury has been, okay, like this guy's been a lot for us. Like he knows what to do. We understand he doesn't need all those reps. He's got all those built up reps. But Raylan Wilson and Jalen Walker needed those reps, and they were able to get more of them with Smile not able to practice. So I think that certainly helped the development there at inside linebacker. We're still young there, but we're incredibly talented at inside linebacker. I mean, we don't have the proven production per se there, but I think if you just we're trying to rank what's the most talented positions based on pure talent, I think inside linebacker is certainly up there. So again, Smile, CJ, with the starters, and I would say Raylan Wilson, Jalen Walker there in that kind of four-man rotation inside linebacker for us. Okay, all right, secondary. Cornerback, you guys know I'm very high on Dalen Everett. I think he can have a potential all-SEC caliber type year. He's going to start at one of those spots for us. Ellis Robinson IV continues to do good things. He probably made the play of the practice that I was at a couple weeks ago, like a falling backwards, reaching behind his head, interception. It was almost like a one-handed kind of interception, just ridiculous stuff. His talent is there. He's young. Things you got to learn. You got to make sure the coaches can actually trust you out there to not blow assignments. Like being physically gifted, which he is in spades, that's one thing, but just mastering everything that we do in our defense. And guys, our defense is very complex. The things that we do, our quarter stuff, our mod stuff, we do a bunch of different things, right? So you got to be able to master all that and the communication part of that. But I think he'll play for us this year. I do think we're going to have a rotation at cornerback in a way that we really haven't before, but I feel confident saying that Dalen Everett is going to be one of those starters. The other cornerback, you kind of got three guys there between Ellis Robinson, of course, the number 2 overall player in the country, number 1 cornerback in this class, and then Daniel Harris, a rising sophomore, and Julian Humphrey now in his 3rd year. When I was at practice a couple weeks ago, it was Harris exclusively really working with the number 1 defense. But him and Humphrey kind of just been going back and forth. Like it's one guy's turn, one practice, it's the other guy's turn, the next practice, back and forth. I think it was Harris, the first scrimmage, it was Humphrey yesterday at scrimmage on Saturday. So I don't know who's going to open as a starter right now. I truly do not know because it's really been practice by practice. It's been a different guy. The reality is I think that competition will continue into the season until somebody really cements themselves, emerges and says, hey, I'm the guy at that spot. But they're both highly, highly talented players, and we're in good hands. It's not a situation where we just don't really have anybody to play that spot. No, it's not that. It's like we got 3 guys that could all play at a very high level, and we just got to decide on which one that we feel the most comfortable with right now. If I had to handicap it, Humphrey's the guy with the most experience, right? He's been in the system the longest. Harris has freakish length, really good athlete. Ellis Robinson is just as smooth as they come, man. Athleticism, ball skills, length. This guy's the real deal. I guess I would lean Humphrey just because he's been in the system a little bit longer. But again, I do think that we're going to rotate at corner, maybe series by series, in a way that we really haven't seen at Georgia under Kirby Smart because all these guys deserve to play. They're all good enough to play. And if you don't play them, they're going to transfer. And you don't want that to happen, right? So I think you're going to see a rotation there. At star, very clear-cut, Janelle Aguero is the guy. He is the guy. I thought it could be the guy last year. Tyke Smith was just unbelievable for us that held off Janelle Aguero. But Janelle is 100% the guy. He's a prototype. I've said it many times. Prototype for that star position for Georgia in our defense. He's physical enough to fit against the run in the box. He's also athletic enough to cover in space. Love the guy. I think he's a star in the making for us. He's 100% the guy at star. Behind him, there's 2 guys. Kyron Jones was the guy kind of working behind him early on, but it seems like Ja'Cory Thomas has also been getting a lot of reps there behind Janelle Aguero, kind of trying to push him, but Janelle held all those guys off. So I would say Janelle Aguero, then probably Ja'Cory Thomas, maybe Kyron Jones behind him. But if Aguero stays healthy, it's going to be Janelle Aguero's show at that star position. Then at safety, I know we're all high on KJ Bolden. I love KJ Bolden. I've watched this kid for a long, long, long time. Seen him live many times at Buford High School. But I don't think he's going to start week 1. Malachi Starks, obviously, as a returning first-team All-American, is going to start. We know this. I think Dan Jackson's going to start, guys. He was the guy out there with the number 1 defense when I was at practice. He continues to be the guy going out there with the number 1 defense at the scrimmages, according to what I've been told, what I've heard. And I don't see any reason why that would change between now and the first game less than 2 weeks from now. I believe that Dan will start. Now, what could happen is we could have a 2022 season all over again, where Dan Jackson, if you remember, started against Oregon in 2022 at safety. Well, Malachi Starks was at that time, he was the hotshot 5-star safety who this guy's just doing great things. He's got to play. He did play against Oregon. We played a lot. Dan played a lot too. But Malachi was just making ridiculous plays. We all remember the falling backwards interception. It was one interception, right? But a crazy play. And then what happens week 2? We're like, yeah, we just can't keep this guy off the field. He's starting. He starts the rest of the year. He started every game since then, right? I love Dan Jackson, man. 60-year guy. He's an ultimate team player. And he's a good player. A lot better player than people want to give this guy credit for. Actually started multiple games for Georgia. And a good athlete. A much better athlete than people want to give him credit for. He's going to start. I believe that he will. Because especially as safety, Kirby puts premium on trust. That I know that you know what to do. And if anybody knows what to do in our defense at safety, it's Dan Jackson, 60-year guy, right? So I think he's going to start. But it also wouldn't shock me. I expect KJ Bolden to play week 1. I think he's going to be in the 2 deep right there behind Dan Jackson. Like Malachi, I expect him to play in his first game in Mercedes-Benz Stadium against a Power 5 opponent, a highly anticipated matchup. So I can see the similarities there where if he plays really well when he gets reps against Clemson, if he does get reps like I think that he will, that maybe he just wins that job very early and takes it from Dan Jackson because he can just simply do things athletically that Dan Jackson, although Dan's a good athlete, just can't do all the things that KJ Bolden does the way that KJ Bolden can do them. So that wouldn't shock me. And look, I just want the best player to play, man. I want the best player to play. I want what's best for Georgia. If Dan Jackson's what's best for Georgia right now because KJ's not quite ready, awesome. But if KJ's what's best for Georgia, then awesome. Like I just want what's best for Georgia. And right now I think Dan is going to go out there week 1. And then when KJ gets out there, we'll see what happens. I think opening the season, KJ will be behind Dan Jackson, working in there. I think you're going to see either Jake Pope or maybe even Justin Rhett as the other option there in the 2 deep behind Malachi Stark. So there you have it, guys. That's the offense and defense. 2 deep, go punt return, kick return. Look, when I was at practice, punt return, it was Anthony Evans. Sokovia White was out there. Dominic Lovett was out there. Those are the top 3 guys, if I remember correctly. Kick return, Anthony Evans again. Malachi Starks was out. KJ Bolden was also out there with the punt return. But kick return, it was Sokovia White, Anthony Evans, Dylan Bell was out there. Malachi Starks was out there, kick return. The common denominators there are Sokovia White and Anthony Evans. I have a hard time believing it will be anybody but Anthony Evans returning punts for us to start the season against Clemson, as long as the coaches trust him. I think he will be him. I would say Dominic Lovett, who has experience doing that at Missouri a couple years back, could also be an option there. KJ Bolden was a dynamic returner at Buford in high school. He was a dynamic guy in offense, too. I mean, he's got to play offense for us easily, just won't do it. So he could be an option there, too, but I think it'll be Anthony Evans if I had to project right now. Kick return, I would say probably Anthony Evans, but Dylan Bell wouldn't surprise me either. He's done some of that for us at times. He's a playmaker in his own right. So we'll see there, but I think Anthony Evans is probably going to be our primary returner. Kicker, we know Thorson's going to be the punt returner, right? Woodring is a kicker. Thorson's as the punter, who is now in his 3rd year, and this guy, I mean, like punters, like you don't hear much about them coming out of camp, but this guy just been told he's just booming them. And I was out there watching some of the punting they were doing at practice, and yes, he was booming them, and his ability to knock the ball down inside the 10, all those things. I think Thorson's going to be a really good player for us this year. I think special teams in general will be a weapon for Georgia in a way that, I mean, we've always had good special teams, but I think this year might be an even better unit than we've ever really had under Kirby Smart. So I'm excited about that. But all right, guys, that is it. That is my final depth chart projection based on what we've learned throughout the course of fall camp. Now less than 2 weeks away from kickoff against Clemson inside Mercedes-Benz Stadium in Atlanta. I can't wait, guys. We're almost there. So I hope you enjoy this episode. I am going to have the first film session video breaking down the Clemson offense later this week. You don't want to miss it, guys. I've been working on that for a couple of months. So I'm almost done with it, putting some finishing touches on it. We'll have the defense for you guys next week. So again, if you're not subscribed, you don't want to miss that, guys. Subscribe right now. You get all that content uploaded directly to your feed. You don't have to go search for it. It'll be right there for you guys, and we'll have you covered throughout the entire 2024 season. So I appreciate you guys being here. Like the video, comment, subscribe, all of the above. Thank you for that. I'm Tyler, and as always, go Dogs!
Man, is there going to be some property destroyed tonight. 26-21. Dogs on top.